What do I have to say? Well, what do I have to say? It's showtime. Welcome everybody to my non-spoiler slight more light spoilers review of the Tim Burton's directing return of Beetlejuice. This is a movie that's been a long time in the making, so to speak. So anyways, I'm going to give some thoughts because people have been curious, wondering what is my take on this. And I got to tell you, I have a bit of an interesting take. I have probably more complaints than I've seen people mention. And maybe it's just me nitpicking, being that I'm a huge fan of this. So let's get down to this. This is Beetlejuice. And it was, this movie has been a long time in the making. So let me tell you who is in charge of this movie, give you the actors, all that good jazz that I do. But let's just say, as the man himself would say, it's showtime. Beetlejuice 2024 is a fantasy comedy horror directed and returning the amazing Tim Burton, who I love a lot. We have a screenplay by Alfred Gore and Miles Miller, and it is the direct sequel to the 1988 classic, one of my favorite Tim Burton movies of all time, Beetlejuice. This new Beetlejuice has returning cast members Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, and Catherine O'Hara. And as for the new cast, we have Justin Theroux, Monica Bellucci, Jenna Ortega, and Willem Dafoe. So what do I think about this movie? Well, this movie is a tough one for me, folks. This movie is a tough one. I saw this with the Little Dictator, okay? And I've got a lot of thoughts being a fan of the original, and a lot of critiques, and I feel like a lot of people have liked this movie, but for me, I'm not really big on a lot of the choices that they made. And I'm going to have to do just some tiny light spoilers to give you my exact things that I did not care for in this movie. So I'm going to give you my overall view of this movie, and then I'll get into certain scenes, and I will let you guys know when I get to those scenes that may be considered spoilers, but I'm going to try to keep it vague. But overall, just to give you my grade right up front, I honestly feel like this is a 7 out of 10 movie for me. And I think grading is funny because people will be like, oh, no, it should be an 8 or a 9. Like, don't get me wrong. Anything from a 1 through even a 5 or a 6 is watchable to me. And 7 and beyond, I will recommend the movie. But this movie has a lot of issues that I feel like I need to address here. And hopefully I'm not the only person who felt this way while seeing this movie. So Beetlejuice kind of picks up where the original left off. And Beetlejuice picks up with our favorite supernatural host. Thank you. Beetlejuice being in the waiting room, and it was where his head was shrunk at the end. If you guys remember, he tried to cut in line, he got his head shrunk, all that jazz. And this sort of picks up from that. Now, I will put a cool storyline in this. In this movie, the person who was the father from the original, it plays off that he died. There's a little bit of a mystery there, or something they try to build up. Also, there's a lot of other stuff going on. So to be very vague before I get into my specific discrepancies with this movie, first and foremost, I did not like Jenna Ortega in this movie, and I'm a huge fan of Jenna Ortega. And it's not her fault. In this movie, Jenna Ortega plays the role of the angsty teen who's kind of rebellious, and she played it well. I didn't like the character. Her character specifically, I felt was very annoying. And that's new for me, because anything Jenna Ortega has ever been in, from Scream to You to that drama she did when she was in high school or whatever, she's a great actress. But I feel like the character was not written very well. Willem Dafoe is in this. I love anything Willem Dafoe does. Willem Dafoe in this plays like a investigator. He's trying to track down Beetlejuice because of a situation, and like I said, I'll get into that when I get to my light spoilers. But I felt like they didn't utilize his character very well, and the biggest ball drop for me was what is her name? Michelle Belushi, I believe. Yes, or Monica Bellucci. She plays a very interesting character that has been hinted in the Beetlejuice lore. And I feel like the movie does not utilize this character well. They have her in the background, there's a thing going on with her, and they wrap it up super quick. And that's kind of one of my complaints I want to talk about with this story. This story, this movie has a lot, and I mean a lot, of different storylines going on. And this is a problem I had with Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. It's worse than that movie, but this movie suffers from the same issue. There is way too much going on, and the stuff I was interested in this movie kind of gets glazed over, while the things I was not so interested in kind of get focused on. I want to say they did a lot more in this movie that I like versus Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, but it still felt like this could have been 2, maybe 3 movies. Like they could have did this movie and they could have did a clever play and did the same movie, but his name 3 times. Because I'm not going to say it. I don't want to end up with that dude in my house, okay? Nobody wants Beetlejuice in their house. Anyways, that isn't the point. The point is, I felt like they tried to do too much in this movie. And it has an extremely long runtime, and it still doesn't feel like the movie has quite enough in its runtime to flesh out all of the stories that they build up. And I want to say, hey, hello, everyone. Good to see you. We have in here Esther. Hello. Not yet. Hello. We have Christine. How are you? Carmen. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me for my light spoiler review of Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. So my first problem is the plotting. My second problem is the actors. The older cast in particular, it's not they don't have anything to do, but it doesn't feel like what they do has any impact on the story. I have no idea, even though I love Winona Ryder, I have no idea why really she's in this movie. She doesn't have a lot to do, and the storyline they give her is just not particularly interesting. And you heard my complaints with Willem Dafoe and Monica Bellucci. Once again, Catherine O'Hara doesn't feel like she has a whole lot to do in this film. And it's just kind of disappointing. Now, I want to talk about the main good point in this movie. And the absolute standout of this movie, who I was 50-50 on, was Michael Keaton. If you want to see Michael Keaton come back to a role that feels like he never left, and I'm going to be real with you, Michael Keaton is getting up there in years. And I think Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice was better and more convincing than Michael Keaton as Batman in the new Flash movie, which, by the way, I hated the new Flash movie. But I think here he really is giving a performance like he gives a shit about the character. It feels like this man never lost a beat. What's interesting about this, too, is Beetlejuice is very expressive. He has a lot of, he's very animated. And for as old as Michael Keaton is, I felt like we were back in '88, man. He is moving around. He's got the expressive arms. He's like, hey, guys, I just want to say something. He's got that voice going on. Now, my only complaint with Michael Keaton's performance is that because he's older, there is certain points in the film, especially because Beetlejuice talks extremely fast, and he does that gravelly voice, where I don't know if this is my theater issue or if anyone else has had this complaint, but I couldn't really understand some of the lines that he delivered because his voice was so gravelly, the speakers were so loud, and I just couldn't make out certain things he said. But all of the jokes and whatnot came through. The other thing about the humor of this movie, it is very funny. I did chuckle at a lot of parts. The little one did laugh at a couple of parts. So the humor, more often than not, it hit than it missed. There's some humorous, dark stuff. I also think the direction is very good and the cinematography. That was never going to be an issue in this review. Tim Burton is one of my favorite directors. And I think this is a project, and this is something that Tim Burton, it's like Tim Burton's kid. And he is very much invested in this world. And Christine says, "Oh, you have to leave. That's okay. You could come back and see me again. Catch the replay." Anyways, Tim Burton is very invested in this world. So for me, this felt like a labor of love as far as aesthetics and the overall feel of being back in the world of Beetlejuice. So no issues there. But my really big main hang-up with this movie, my really big gripe is just what they decide to do with the characters and the story. Like, look, it's a Beetlejuice movie. I'm not going into this expecting some Academy Award winning type thing. I'm not really even expecting that strong of writing. It's pretty simple, you know. Beetlejuice is a spiritual exorcist, you know, and he does wacky shenanigans. He causes stuff, and our characters have to fix that. Like, it's not a deep story. But the problem with Tim Burton, and I will say this, or not even Tim Burton because he didn't write this. I'm going to scale that back. The problem with Alfred Gore and Miller, who wrote the original script as well, is that I felt like they weren't sure how this movie was going to do, so they crammed everything into this one movie. And there's several storylines that could have been interesting. Beetlejuice being hunted down by this detective could have been its own movie. Beetlejuice's ex-wife could have been its own movie. There's a lot of things they put into this that would have been a compelling story on its own. And by the time you get near the end of the movie, it's like the writers realize they have to wrap up the storylines, and boom, 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 we just close everything out quickly. And it feels very unsatisfying, especially because the minor stories I was more interested in than the main story of the movie. And that's a big issue for me. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm on an island. But I feel like they really didn't take enough time for me to really flesh out a lot of the story that they started in the beginning of the film. And so Winona Ryder comes back as Lita Dietz, and I kind of give you a little synopsis of everything that's going on. So this takes place in 2024, and Lydia Dietz is the host of a supernatural talk show called Ghost House, and she's estranged from her daughter, Astrid, played by Jenna Ortega, after her husband, Richard, died in the Amazon during one of her episodes. Lydia hallucinates seeing Beetlejuice in the audience, and the ghost who tried to marry her 36 years earlier, they return to the house where it all starts, and they're trying to figure out why she's having these visions, what's going on. Is Beetlejuice stuck in limbo, or is he not? Spoiler alert, he's not, and shenanigans are going to happen. And that's kind of where we kick things off. And so they set up the groundwork for this really intriguing mystery. Now, the first thing, if you guys don't know, they killed the husband of the original off in the beginning of the film. And I have no problems with that. I actually think it's funny because if you know the history behind this movie and the original actor, he was actually into child things, and I'll leave it at that. And he got busted, and he's currently in prison right now for pretty much the rest of his life. So the original actor was not going to be back for this film. And I think the way they handled that was very good. And I think that was a good jump-off point for the story. The issue is this storyline does not go anywhere. It's almost like a setup, and it feels like a setup. And I have no problem with that, but they make it so important only to never really go into anything about it. Like, He just disappeared in the Amazon. They build up this mystery. It's kind of the crux of uh, um, why Winona Ryder and uh, Jenna Ortega's characters don't talk. So, I mean, fine, whatever. That's whatever. The biggest missed opportunity for me, and the light spoiler I wanted to get across to you guys, is there is another thread that's set up. So in the original movies, Beetlejuice had a ring, and he was going to use the ring to marry Lydia in the first film. And so they bring in this movie the wife. First of all, I love the character design of Beetlejuice's ex-wife. I think it's really cool. She's got like a stitched up face and everything. But my issues with the film is they give very little backstory on the wife, and she is in the background but doesn't do anything. And I feel like she's supposed to be the antagonist, but she doesn't move the story in any meaningful way. Like, she does get events going, but it doesn't feel like she impacts the story. And then by the time, you're supposed to get your final showdown or your face off between her and Beetlejuice, and there's supposed to be a resolution, she gets taken care of like super quick. And it's like, cool Easter egg. I like that you're addressing something that was in the first movie, but I don't understand why it was put in the film if you were just kind of going to glaze right over it and not give us any more of her story. It's weird. It's super weird. Jenna Ortega's character. Jenna Ortega has a storyline going on in this, and she is in love with somebody, and there's a little bit of a story there, and it's super interesting. She's in love with a ghost, and so I feel like this was going to go somewhere as well. And they don't do anything with this storyline either. It just kind of gets dropped by the time we get closer to the end of the movie. Now, one thing I will give the movie, if people remember the original Beetlejuice, Michael Keaton is not in that movie a lot. For as much of an impact as he has on the movie, he's not a really big presence. In this movie, he does have not that big of a role, much like the original, but it feels like there's more of them. Maybe it's because Michael Keaton is that charismatic and he's very memorable, but it feels like Beetlejuice has a lot more screen time in this. And so, there's a lot more jokes, and he does kind of pick up the movie. The other thing I wanted to mention about this movie is the pacing of the film is rather slow. There are some points where the movie slows down quite a bit, and it focuses on things that either aren't important or that I don't care about. And it takes away from the things I want to see. So this movie about halfway feels super slow. Like it feels like it slows down a bit. And I mean, not noticeable to where I got bored, but just kind of weird decisions. So the other thing that I wanted to mention in this film is the end of the movie. The end of the movie, to me, does the sequel thing. Not the most egregious thing I've seen, but when I got to the end of this film, I felt like this was a stepping stone to a better movie. And what I mean by that was not that this was a bad movie, but this was like going to be a trilogy, and it has the problem that the middle movie always has, where everything is kind of set up in the middle of the movie, and then you have to see the third movie to get the big bang, crazy final finale, which is weird because this does have a big, crazy final finale in a sense. So I'm really confused. It feels like this is supposed to be a trilogy and we're just getting the second movie, even though this is a direct sequel. And they never really said this was a trilogy. So it's very odd structurally. But all in all, the sandworms return. There's a pretty cool scene with them. Like I said, this is light spoilers. I don't want to give it away, but the sandworms do return, and they're pretty well. The other thing I wanted to talk about that kind of was a negative for me was the special effects. On the plus side, there's a lot of practical effects, but there's a lot of CGI. And I gotta say, I don't know what it is about modern remakes or sequels, but the CGI is kind of iffy in spots. And because they use practical effects, the CGI stood out a lot more to me and was kind of jarring. It's a very uncanny look to some of the scenes, and it takes you out of the movie because in the original Beetlejuice, it was all practical effects because that's what they had. And if you ever seen the snake rail scene was stop motion animation, which was really cool. One of my favorite scenes where, like, he's a banister and then he puts his head up and he's talking as the snake thing. Uh, in this, they do a lot of those kind of gags, but they throw in CGI, and I feel like it ruins the authenticity of the practical effects that they are clearly using throughout this movie. Which, like I said, these are all minor nitpicks that I have with the film. And I don't know if any of you other guys out there who have watched this movie will catch the same stuff that I have, or maybe it's just me and, this is my thing and I'm supposed to be super critical to you guys. But it just feels jarring to get so many good practical effects and then be taken out of the movie with a random CGI effect or something like that. So the effects for me would be like an 8 out of 10. With that being said, Carmen, with that being said, Beetlejuice to me is 20 times better than Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I really like this movie. The Little Dictator liked this movie. My daughter. We watched the original and then we went to see the sequel. And so this is a good movie. And I do think you should go out and see it in theaters. There isn't really much out. There is some stuff coming out this weekend that I would suggest over this, but it's more adult stuff. But if you want to see a family movie that's got kind of horror elements to it, or you're not a big horror fan, or you're just a fan of the original Beetlejuice, I do think that this is a very well thought out sequel. I just think there's a few things they could have did differently. And I'm going to give Beetlejuice, once again, as I stated when I started, a 7 out of 10. I think it's not that it's not watchable. If there were other things out, I'd probably suggest them over this. But for now, with nothing out, I would recommend going out and seeing this. I didn't have a bad time with this movie. I wasn't grossly disappointed. Obviously, I'm not ranting. It's just a few minor things that if they make a third movie, I hope that they fix, because this movie had way too much going on in it. There is a lot, and I mean a lot, going on in this movie. And I feel like they put so many things in it and they just aren't able to address everything because they just didn't have enough time. And I blame that a lot more on the writing. Tim Burton's direction, as always, is great. The set dresses and designs are great. The cinematography, for the most part, through most of the movie, is outstanding. And it's amazing that this movie exists. Like, it's crazy we're getting the sequel to Beetlejuice all of these years ago. And not only that, apparently it's doing really well in the box office. So I'm really glad that they brought back a sequel and they did it right. And I'm really going to end with that. They did do this sequel really well, and they didn't try to put in any modern bullshit or nothing like that. It's just a straight up fun sequel. These are just my minor complaints on the movie as a whole, as a movie reviewer. But I would see it again. Like, if someone said to me, hey, we're going to the movies, we're going to go watch Beetlejuice, I'd be like, oh, well, I got some hours to kill. It's cool. And I go out and I watch it again. So it's not egregiously bad. It's just, as far as movies go, it wouldn't be in my top list. I don't know if I'd rush out and buy it. I'd buy it just to have it next to my original copy of Beetlejuice, just for collection's sake. But, if I was new, I don't know if I go and pick it up. I'd probably wait and pick it up when it was on sale, or ask for it for Christmas. I mean, it's a good movie. It's good. It's not great. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's not doing anything special. It's just is what it is. It's a competent sequel to a movie that everybody loves. And I mean, in 2024, you could do a hell of a lot worse. So I don't know where other people landed on their reviews. And it was just when I got out of the theater, the first thing that came in my head was a 7. Sometimes I just rate on, like, boom, a number appears, and that's how I feel. But I do like to explain my ratings and give you very detailed analysis. So there you go. Definitely. Yeah, I'm not ranting on this one. Nothing really to rant about. And like I said, nothing made me angry. Nothing wowed me. It's just a very, in the middle, safe movie that doesn't offend you as a fan, but doesn't do anything really new or different. It just kind of is what it is. It knows what it is. The actors do great performances. And the jokes are funny. Like, I'm not going to lie. I laughed out loud a couple of times. There's a couple of gags in the movie that are super hilarious. And there's a couple of scenes and situational humor that is funny in this movie. And I think that's the big thing, too. It's a good comedy movie, and we don't get a lot of those. It's good comedy, horror, suspense kind of a film, some scary moments. And it does what the original does. It's just I wish they would have focused the story a little bit more. And I think this could have been a solid, like, 8 or 9 out of 10 for me. Unfortunately, there's just a few little discrepancies that I had with the film. But the most important thing is my kid had fun. And I think this is a movie that if you go with the family will have fun. And it's something nice that's a little bit edgy, but everybody can watch. There's nothing egregious. There's an F-bomb once, a couple of shit and ass and damn and all the normal PG-13 things. But it's nothing that you can't bring the kids along or, you can't have fun with your family. And I think that's what's important because the first movie kind of had that feel, even though some parts were scary and by today's standards, a little edgy. I still feel like it has that fun to it. And that's what's important to a movie like this. So in the comments below, let me know, what did you think of the new 2024 Beetlejuice? Did you have the same complaints I do? Do you think I'm just being nitpicky? Or did you feel like I did, that you were a little disappointed in the story? Or did you go with your family? Are you going to take your family to see this? Let me know all of those things. And tomorrow morning or afternoon, I'm going to have my episode 1, The Penguin breakdown. DC Afternoon is returning because I wanted to wait till The Penguin launched. And I am going to be doing a breakdown every day, episode by episode, of The Penguin. If you would like me to do a watch along, let me know in the comments below because I really love this show. I would love to sit there and watch it and pause it and analyze different scenes and things that I love in the show. But I will be covering The Penguin from now until it ends, I believe in November or somewhere in there. So I'm going to be covering all the episodes. I'm also going to start covering one of me and Bitchy's favorite shows by the amazing Tyler Sheridan, who did Yellowstone. There's a show that we watched last year called The Tulsa King, and it has just returned with its premiere episode. And I got to tell you, it's going to be a good year for shows. The first episode was fucking fantastic. Stallone is just amazing. And I'm going to start covering that show as well here on the channel. So anyways, thank you everybody for watching. And as always, remember, there is only one rule here in the Fandom Zone. Don't say my name 3 times.